Hey guys, it's Michelle. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing my November, Today I am doing my November wrap up. In the month of November, I read 12 books, which I think is the amount of books I've read every month. I've done a wrap up, so I'm staying on brand. So great. The first book that I read was Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is the only book I hadn't read by her, and I loved it. It's the only other one of her books besides The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo that I gave 5 stars to. So the premise of this book is that a newly married couple, I think they were married for 9 days, the husband dies in an accident. So it is how she deals with it afterwards, with also his grieving mother. And I thought it was so good. I was sitting on the couch crying. The last sentence had me crying. And none of her other books had really done that except for The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I was very excited to go back into another book that really touched me, and I just Taylor Jenkins Reid is my new favorite author. That's just it. She's definitely my new favorite author. I have an e-arc of Daisy Jones and the Six that I cannot wait to get to. I think it comes out in March. I think I'm going to try to read it hopefully at the end of this month or in the beginning of 2019. I definitely can't wait for it to come out in March. I have it. I need to read it. I cannot wait to read it. So, Taylor Jenkins Reid. You cannot go wrong with any of her books, but this was definitely my second favorite after The Seven Husbands. So, I went off to a great start for November. However, then, for some reason, I decided to do Fantasy November, where I attempted to read a lot of my fantasy books on the shelf, and I read 3 fantasy books, and that was it, and then I gave up for Fantasy November. But that's okay. I'm very much a mood reader, so obviously after reading those 3 fantasy books, I just honestly wasn't feeling it. That doesn't mean I'm never going to not read these books on my shelf. It just means that I couldn't do what I had set out to do. But that's okay. So the first fantasy book that I read for the month of November was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This was actually a reread. So the first time I read it in 2015, I listened to it on audiobook and I hated it. I gave it 2 stars. I thought it was so boring, and I don't know if it was the audiobook or if it was me, but when I reread it this time, I gave it 3 stars. I actually thought it was pretty decent. And that's about it. This is a book, you probably know, but that's okay. This is a book about Mare Barrow, who is a red blood. She has red blood, but she lives in a world where silver blood has abilities and powers, and they are the elite. But all of a sudden she has powers too, so that's basically where it goes, and it was okay. Honestly, I didn't hate it. I liked it more than the first time I read it. So I did decide to carry on with the series, but that's not the next book I read. I did give Red Queen 3 stars. It was fine. The next book that I read for November was Daughter of the Pirate King. We actually listened to this on the way to and from YALLFest, so I tried to stick with my Fantasy November by doing this, and it was, again, fine. I gave it 3 stars. I don't think Castman has any opinions on it whatsoever. It was just a book he had to listen to because of me. But essentially, this is what the title says. Alosa is the daughter of the Pirate King, and he is the greatest pirate in the world. And so she gets on the ship and kidnaps herself to find a map. And it was fine. I don't know. Maybe because it was the audiobook and she had an accent, I didn't think it was the greatest thing. And also Alosa kind of bothered me. I thought she was kick-ass at some points, and then at other points she was just so annoying. So I actually unhauled this book. I am not going to read the next one. Like, it didn't entertain me enough that I feel like I want to keep going. So I have actually unhauled this, but that's okay. It was a good shot. So, and it was the second fantasy book I read in November, so great. The next book that I read, I was actually supposed to read for my October TBR, and I just kept putting it off. And that was Bad Girls Don't Die by Katie Allender. I did not like this book. So when I first started reading it, I was like kind of really into it. And then it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. So I gave this 2 stars. Basically, it's about this girl and her sister, and they move into this like big Victorian house in this community, and her sister is essentially possessed by something. And the worst part is that it's a series. So if the first one couldn't be bad enough, there's 2 more that I'm sure are even worse. I didn't like the writing. It was so weird. Like, I can't even explain. It just was not good. So I gave this 2 stars, and also ultimately unhauled that one as well. So that's okay. I did finish it. So there's that. Didn't do nothing. So the next book that I read was Glass Sword by Victoria Aveyard, and that is the second in the Red Queen series. And I had 75 pages left of this book, and I DNF'd it. And I don't know if it was because it was so boring or because I made the mistake of listening to the audiobook again. I did listen to the audiobook as I was reading along with the physical book, because the physical book was boring me to death, and I really wanted to continue on with the series. But what ultimately happened is I DNF'd it with 75 pages left to go, and I unhauled it to a friend who actually likes this series. So they deserve to belong to someone who actually liked it and wanted to read it. So I gave Glass Sword 2 stars. I'm not continuing on with the series. The series now belongs to someone who actually likes it. So that's just how it goes. And that ended Fantasy November. So the next books that I read are all contemporaries, and I'm not even mad about it. The next book that I read was The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I also made a mistake, and I should have listened to the audiobook, but instead I read the ebook of it. I gave this 4 stars, and I truly believe if I listened to the audiobook where Elizabeth Acevedo reads it herself, I would have given it 5 stars. I have heard excerpts of the audiobook, and it sounds amazing, but the only thing I had available for me was the ebook, so that's what I read, and I thought it was amazing, but it wasn't like 5 stars amazing. And so that was probably my fault for not listening to the audiobook, but that's okay. This is the story of X, who is a poet, but it's also about her family and her twin brother and love and sexuality and God, and it was about everything. It wasn't just a contemporary that was just about romance and that was it. It involved so much, and it was beautiful. And I just got an arc of her new book, which I can't remember the name, but I will put right here, and I'm so excited to read it. I have no idea if it's in verse or not, but I'm so excited. I thought this was beautiful. I thought it was great. I gave it 4 stars, which is great. The next book that I read was This Song Will Save Your Life by Lila Sales. I gave this 3 stars. I talk about this in my weekend reading vlog, which I will link down below, but there was a relationship in this book that I really didn't like, that it was not okay. But basically this is about a girl who becomes a DJ prodigy at age 16, and I give this 3 stars, and now just talking about it, I want to lower it to 2 stars. Like, a lot of it was unrealistic, and a lot of it was melodramatic, and I didn't like the relationship. So it was just a little problematic for me, so I'm giving this 2 stars instead of the 3 that's on Goodreads, and I will change that. So that was the next book that I read. The next book that I attempted to read after that was Final Draft by Riley Redgate. I DNF'd this 75 pages in, and I gave it 2 stars. I had a lot of issues with this book. It was slow. It was written in third person, which I don't like for contemporaries for some reason. And also, there was so much punctuation on every page. Like, you don't need 2 em dashes per page. I gave up on it, and that's okay. But the next book that I did read and finish and complete is That Night by Amy Giles. This is the story of 2 people who are in the aftermath of a shooting, and they never go, or the author never goes into what happened at the shooting or who was the shooter or where even it was. And I thought that was really cool. It was ultimately just about the people after the shooting. So there was nothing gory about the shooting, and I really like that a lot. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars because it wasn't the most original thing I have ever read. Like, the relationship between these 2 people, it wasn't like that original. But I liked it. I will read whatever Amy Giles has out coming next, so great. The next book that I read after that was Bird Box by Josh Malerman. This book was so good. This is a dystopian world where I'm not going to say a lot. I have just decided I'm not going to tell you a lot. But basically, this woman and her 2 children are going down a river blindfolded. And that's basically all I knew going in, and I think that was for the best. But I gave this book 4 stars. There were some things at the end that weren't like described clearly, I guess, and that's why I docked a star. But I'm very excited. However, I will say that I watched the trailer for the Netflix movie, and they have changed everything. So I was once excited about this Netflix adaptation, and now I'm like, so that's, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. I thought the book was amazing, so I'm afraid they're going to completely ruin it with this movie. So we shall see. Next book that I read after Bird Box was Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake, and this book was this my only 5-star? No. This was my second 5-star read of the month. This is a book about a girl and her twin brother, and the twin brother is accused of raping his girlfriend. So ultimately, the twins' relationship changes, and it was just so good. There's so much representation in this LGBTQ, sexual assault, like lots of things that other authors veer away from. Ashley Herring Blake was like, no, I'm writing about it. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was great. It was hard to read some of the things, but I like hard-hitting YA books, YA contemporaries, so I just thought it was beautiful. I definitely recommend this. I wish I had read it sooner, but it was great. 5 stars. And the last book that I read for November was Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick. This was another reread. This was a mistake to reread. When I first read it 3 years ago, back in 2015, I actually gave this 4 stars. I thought it was great. I guess I hadn't read Twilight in a while, and I thought it was like a Twilight, great comparison, good, give 4 stars. I don't know if it was the audiobook or if it was me or what, but I ended up giving my reread of Hush Hush 2 stars. It was not good, folks. It was not good. I will, however, still watch the movie whenever that comes out. I know they have cast it, so it'll probably come out in 2019, and I will definitely watch it because I love to torture myself with bad YA adaptions. So, great. Those are all the books I read in November. I'm currently reading Odd One Out by Nick Stone, and, oh shoot, what else am I reading? And Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. I will tell you with Truly Devious, I'm 50 pages in, and she has also been using 2 em dashes per page. So, I'm struggle busing a little bit with Truly Devious, but that's okay. As far as what I'm reading in December, I'm participating in 3 readathons. I'm doing the TisTheSeasonAthon, the Smut-A-Thon, and the Grishaalongathon Readathon along. I think that's what it's called. Definitely, probably not. But I will link all those down in the description as well. So I am planning on reading a lot in December, and it'll be great. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!